Hi, I'm Fox.
And I'm Zoe.
And we were going to review X-Men Days of Future Past. But you know what? We did you one better.
So this movie was a surprise.
I actually liked it.
This was a movie, I remember the consensus when this movie came out was that it wasn't good. That it was weird and confusing and it was like a weird option. Maybe that's not actually what the general consensus was, but that was what I heard when this movie first came out. And that's the kind of thought I had in the back of my head for it the entire time. But this was a great movie.
I was prepared to not enjoy it. I was prepared for them to just do really bad time travel, which is really easy to do.
Right.
But it was good.
It was good. It's not mind-blowing time travel. It's not oh, this is so smart of a thing. Not really.
I don't get the complaints about it being complicated, because it's
very simple.
A dude goes to the past.
Yeah, and
that's it.
And paradoxes can't happen because it's not a physical movement to the past. You are going into your previous body and just puppeteering it around, basically. So there's no paradox of you killing yourself accidentally or any kind of whatever.
And it is creating a whole new timeline.
Right. It does destroy the timeline that you're currently in. Mm-hmm. Kind of. For everybody but you are the only one who remembers the previous timeline, but also the whole point of this movie is that they destroy this timeline. The whole point of it is to stop this shit, no matter what happens.
Right, because it's bad.
It's horrible.
Very, very bad.
So, let's properly explain this. So, Days of Future Past...
it opens up in hell.
Yes, it opens up in an apocalyptic future of 2023.
Fuck, I forgot that it takes place in 2023.
Yeah, that was funny to find out. So Sentinels, these giant robots that are built to target specifically mutants, have been kind of mass-produced and also enhanced by Mystique's DNA so that they can alter themselves in whatever way they need to basically copy mutant powers. It's essentially an army of Amazos from DC. And so it's incredibly powerful. The world is a nightmarescape. A lot of cities are completely destroyed. There's a few pockets of humans left. A lot of it full of anti-mutant tyrants, and we don't really see a lot of the future setting other than almost all mutants are dead and a lot of cities are destroyed and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Which is all we need to know. It's a horrible place.
It moves quickly, and I like that. I like that we just get right down to business. This is a hellhole. We need to stop it.
Yeah, and then they introduce the time travel in a very small way first. Mm-hmm. So to kind of get you used to the idea. They don't explain this specifically, which I think is fine. Kitty Pryde's powers have expanded in a way. She can send people's consciousness back in time. And the way that the last pockets of mutant resistance have survived is that whenever they're attacked, she goes back in time, alerts them that they're going to be attacked, and then they move. And then the attack never happens. And they just do that over and over and over. It's not really sustainable, but it has kept them alive a lot longer than others. And we had a really cool opening scene of Sentinels attacking people and just fucking murking Bobby.
It's brutal. It is very brutal. I do appreciate that since they know they're not fully killing off these characters, they can just go hog wild and just torture them. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. They fully kill off a bunch of characters and then they immediately revert it by doing the time travel thing. So we see how important this time travel is and how it can be used.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opening. It's a great way to really cement what we're doing here. And then they're like, okay, how do we do this? Then like Xavier and Magneto are like, how do we use this to fix everything? Because they have their eyes on the long-term prize. They're like, okay, well, if we go back to the 70s, where in this timeline Mystique was captured and experimented on, and I think it's so this timeline is not 100% the original trilogy timeline. It has the same actors, and there are a lot of similarities. It is a version of that timeline. It's different though, and I think the biggest difference is that Mystique is captured in the 70s. I think it's implied that she dies there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because, like, why would they keep her alive?
Right, and they would likely harvest her organs in order to continue the experiments. So I think that's like the big factor of Mystique is captured and experimented on and dies.
It's important to note that the reason she got captured is because she went to go kill the guy who made the Sentinels to try and stop them from happening.
She killed the guy, but the project remained, and she got herself out in the open and long enough to be captured, which is
it was
real
a bad
unfortunate.
plan.
It wasn't
like,
a great plan.
It was a really bad plan.
It was a bad plan. You attacked a guy at one of the most guarded events in fucking history, because it was the wrapping up of the Vietnam War with a lot of these. It was basically peace talks and like confirmation talks between leaders with the Vietnam War all together in one building. And you go to assassinate somebody in that building, it's not a good idea.
Right.
So the initial plan is to send Xavier back in time. But Kitty Pryde is like, no, we can't do that. Sending people back in time is like...
That's difficult.
It's difficult. It's also physically destructive for the person going back in time. They're like, for the short time periods where like it's a couple days, maybe a couple weeks... There's no real long-term effects, but any farther back than that, and then it will kill them either slowly or quickly, and it's incredibly destructive. It's very, very painful. They are initially like, oh shit, well we can't do that, and then Wolverine's like, well, I can't die basically, so yeah. I'll be the one who goes back in time and takes care of this. Which we had a fun little thing of like everybody here knows what Wolverine's power is. I'm surprised that nobody else suggested it. And then I thought about it for exactly one more second, and I was like, of course they didn't suggest fucking Wolverine.
He's not a diplomat. He's a himbo.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were picking somebody to make delicate changes to the timeline in order to achieve a specific outcome, and also work with Magneto and try to make sure not a lot of people die, Wolverine's not the first person you think of. He's probably the last person.
I was going to say, he would be one of the very last. I don't know who else would be worse.
Some versions of Quicksilver.
Yeah, actually...
he's got some daddy problems.
Quicksilver, some versions of Scarlet Witch. That would be a very bad idea.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would say not all versions of Quicksilver, though, because the Quicksilver in this movie, and we'll get to him in a bit, he doesn't really have daddy issues. He has, like, daddy neglect issues. He never really knew his dad, but he doesn't have any, like, direct beef with Magneto like Quicksilver does in the comics, but
right.
It's not a big deal. Wolverine goes back in time.
Yes, he goes back in time and...
immediately kills 4 people.
Immediately.
Literally wakes up. 5 minutes later, 4 people are dead. Now, they're gangsters.
Barely has his pants on. He's murdering people.
But
Gotta
he is
love
murdering
it.
people. It's great. And then he goes to what was the X-Mansion, which in the time period that he's in has become a bit dilapidated. The school has been shut down, and Xavier has stopped teaching. And so he started the school, and then a year later the Vietnam War started, and a bunch of his students and teachers got drafted. and a lot of people died. It was a horrible war, and it pretty much just broke Xavier.
I'd love to know what mutants died in the Vietnam War. That's a fucked up sentence. As soon as it left my mouth.
It's a little fucked up, but like considering what else this movie talks about, it's a reasonable question. Right. Yeah, it's hard to say. We don't really know. But yeah, a lot about Xavier Heights. He is paralyzed at this point, but he has Hank made him a serum to help restore his legs, but because of how it's made, it also suppresses the X gene, and that means he no longer has powers. It's a bit convoluted, but there is a thread of logic. Explanation could have been done a little bit.
It took me a couple minutes to accept. Because at first I'm like, that's fucking stupid.
Right. So the serum, okay, so Hank has made a serum in first class to kind of suppress his physical attributes as Beast.
Yes.
It didn't work initially, but over the years he has... It's only been a couple years, but over that time he has perfected it. Mm-hmm. And it does work, but he's more comfortable. So he uses it to have a more human form, to kind of stay in the closet, but he doesn't keep himself all the time in human form. He sometimes lets himself be in beast form. Right. So he's accepting himself, which is great. And the serum he made for Xavier is based on that. And the whole logic is that it's kind of resetting a person to the baseline human level outside of the X gene, which is what allows his legs to kind of like reset to like working condition. But it has to be continually taken, and that continually suppresses the X gene along with it. And Hank set it up so that Xavier can kind of do the same thing he's doing, where he can like sometimes have his powers, but Xavier is chosen to not necessarily overdose, but to take more of the drug than he necessarily needs.
Just continuously, so he will always be able to walk and never be able to hear voices.
It's leaning more towards he doesn't hear the voices anymore. He's not just physically broken, he's mentally broken.
Yeah, he's not doing well.
He's a mess. So Wolverine goes to the house. There's a fun little fight between Wolverine and Beast. Wolverine tells both of them the whole deal of what's going on. He's Wolverine in this whole movie is very immediate with like the hey, I'm from the future and I'm trying to prevent the apocalypse, and people just kind of go with it.
Yeah, you know what? I do admire this movie for having its characters go, sure, you're from the future. Okay, I accept this.
I mean, they've seen some shit. Like,
you know what? Why not believe him is the thing.
Yeah. It's not, like, automatic, like, no questions asked. Like, both Xavier and Magneto are like, I don't really believe you. But Wolverine is like, I have some, future information, like, things, he kind of, he says like, oh, Xavier, I know like when you first got your powers, and Xavier's like, I never told anybody that. It's like, you will someday, which is cool. And then with Magneto, it's like a similar situation, not exact, but he like goes into detail of like some of the stuff that happens in the future between him and Magneto.
With Magneto, like it's a lot more believable that Magneto would be like, yes, you're from the future where humans have nearly eradicated us all. I told you, Charles.
Yes, it's easier for Magneto to believe it because it's also because there's a palpable like there's like a palpable excitement to being right about something that can override logic, and that's really what's happening to Magneto here. And like props to Michael Fassbender because he sells that.
Yes, absolutely.
So okay, Wolverine goes to Charles, and they're like, and then he's like, oh, we also have to get Magneto because we need both of you to help to convince Mystique to not go down this path. And so they go to the Pentagon to break Magneto out of a super special secret prison. Magneto's in the prison, not because of the shit that happened in Cuba. He escaped that day, but he was blamed for JFK's death. Which we had an initial laugh about of like, it's like, oh, it's kind of funny that he just kind of like offhandedly killed JFK, which is is a funny idea of Magneto just like offhandedly killing JFK, and that just happens to be him.
That's the president you decide to kill? Come on.
But then a little bit later in the movie, he's like, no, I was trying to save him.
Because he's a mutant.
Because he was a mutant.
You know what? Yeah, okay, I can see it.
I like that twist.
Yes.
I like that little thing, because it makes sense with the things that we liked about Magneto that we've talked about in the previous episodes, where he will go to these extremes, but ultimately he's about helping mutants. He's not about taking lives. He will take lives in the course of it, but his goal is helping mutants. That's a great example of that.
Yes.
And also the fact of like, he didn't really bother trying to defend himself against the enemy. He's just like, I could. He probably did say something, but it's not like he's like constantly shouting to the guards like, I'm innocent. You know, he's not bothering. Of course he's not fucking bothering. He
doesn't give a shit. He doesn't expect them to care.
Right. And I also like the little nod of like, oh, JFK was a mutant. Magneto says that's why they killed him, like implying that the government killed JFK because he was a mutant. I'm on the fence about that one.
I mean, I like it just because, like, there is that conspiracy theory that that's who killed JFK. It was actually, I think it's usually
his vice president.
Well, there's the one that's the vice president. There's also the conspiracy theory that it was just the FBI, because, like, the FBI did kill a lot of people.
That's fair. That's fair. So, in that regards, cool. I like the idea more of, like, it was just a general assassination and nobody really knew. Maybe Magneto suspected, but he didn't fully know JFK is a mutant. And he's so self-assured that he just assumes he's right. But he is a mutant, but like nobody really knows. And it's just he got assassinated for other reasons. And that inadvertently led America down a worse path in dealing with mutants. I like that idea.
Yeah. What do you think JFK's power was?
I'm not ready to answer that question. Maybe later.
Okay.
Maybe later. I don't know. I feel like that's this is recorded. I don't want. I have to be careful with some of the things I say. Anyways, okay. So, in order to get Magneto out of prison, they find Quicksilver.
Wolverine.
Oh, Wolverine
knows
just
him.
He's good friends with him. He knew where he grew
Wolverine will know him.
Right.
Since this is the past.
Right. But Wolverine's good friends with him in the future, and he knows where he grew up. He's in the area. Does Wolverine know Quicksilver is Magneto's kid? That's unclear. It's not brought up.
I mean, do these movies know that?
They do.
Oh.
Remember, Quicksilver has a line.
Yeah?
He said, it's like, oh, you can move metal? My mom knew a guy that could do that once. That's the subtle line showing that Magneto's his dad.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize that.
It's also going to be talked about in Apocalypse.
Oh.
It's going to be an actual plot point there. But in here, it's just kind of...
Magneto?
Well, he was a kid in the 40s.
Oh, right. I guess we can do the math.
Roughly. At this point, he's like mid-30s. Maybe late 30s. So, they break Magneto out of the super secret prison. There's an amazing scene on the jet where Magneto reveals to Charles just how many of their mutant friends have died in the years that have taken place between First Class and this movie. It's very heartbreaking.
It is.
It's a wonderful piece of acting. I love that scene.
It was a really good scene. Like, I think that may be my favorite scene out of the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. I've watched that scene just solo a good number of times. It's great.
I can understand why. Like, it not only is it good acting, it's powerful, it's moving, and like I think it's a real important point for all of the characters.
Yeah.
Maybe not Wolverine, but for the others.
Well, I think for Wolverine there is a thing because Wolverine didn't know these mutants, but it's like both Wolverine, Magneto, and Charles, and of course Hank and whatnot, they're all dealing with the same guilt and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Because Wolverine's situation is their guys' situation. The stuff that's happening in the 70s and the stuff that's happening in 2023, they're the same thing. The 2023 one is just a highly accentuated version of it.
Right.
So Wolverine, for Wolverine, this scene is more like he's kind of in the background, but like he's commiserating. Like he is like, yes, there's this horrible guilt and trauma that we're carrying because of this, which is why I'm here. I think the follow up, the lines that Wolverine has at the end is that's actually a pretty good cap on the scene, because I think ultimately that is what convinces Magneto to help them, because Wolverine's like, hey, I get what you're feeling, and that's what I'm trying to stop.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think all around it's a great scene.
It's a wonderful scene. I loved it. And then the drop off Quicksilver. He was only in a part of the movie for a little bit, but he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's a highlight.
He's a highlight. I love how he talks fast, but not in super speed. Because I don't want to get into speedster talk. That's a whole ass thing on its own.
We'll do a side podcast where we talk about fucking speedsters.
I'll write an essay. I don't know. They go. Oh, because then Xavier, after like a bunch of conversations and emotional turmoil, they go to the the peace talks or whatever to stop Mystique, who was taking the guise of one of the Viet Cong generals. And they find her at the place. She tries to assassinate Trask, the scientist who's making the Sentinels. And then they stop her. And Wolverine runs into William Stryker.
Stryker, yes.
Stryker. He's not a general yet. He will be. He's not a general
That's
yet.
true. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, so Wolverine runs into Stryker, has a momentary loss because he has a trauma meltdown, and then that kind of breaks his connection with his past self. And in that trauma meltdown, his future self pulls out his claws unconsciously and swings them and slashes Kitty Pryde, and she's fucked up, but she holds on. I have a note to say about that probably at the end of the podcast. But I don't want to spend when I'm getting sidetracked too much. There's too many things to talk about.
Yes. Wolverine has his PTSD flashback, and during that,
Mystique starts to run away, and then Magneto is like, I need to kill Mystique in order to make sure that they don't get her. So Magneto starts to go after her, and then Beast tries to stop Magneto, and they have a bit of a brawl in public.
And this is the part of the movie that starts to drag for me, because this isn't good. We've talked before about how we don't like some of the characterization of Magneto.
Yes.
But even just that bad characterization aside, what he's doing here, grade A fucking stupid.
Yeah.
You want to protect all mutants by stopping Mystique, from anyone being able to get Mystique. So you're going to attack her in front of all of these cameras, all of this crowd, and you're going to leave her DNA and blood on the pavement. Yeah,
this sequence is the low part of the movie, and it comes down to one thing, which is the weighted history of Magneto in these movies. Because the piece of characterization that has hurt Magneto the most starting from the beginning of these movies is that Magneto's evil. Magneto's not evil as a character. He's not supposed to be. Magneto isn't inherently evil. Magneto does some bad shit for a good cause. Mm-hmm. He crosses a line for important reasons. That's Magneto. But in these movies, Magneto, deep down, at least has a sliver of evil, and will therefore sometimes just do evil things. And the writers will use that as an excuse to push a certain scene or plot point forward, and it doesn't work. The writers for the people who wrote Days of Future Past have been very smart about how they've written the characters up to this point. I think at this point it's either one of two things. One, they didn't have a better way to have the end of the movie not be right here, right now, or they felt they had to bring this characterization forward to Magneto because it's in the other movies and they didn't have a choice. Probably a studio mandate kind of thing. I hate both of those. I hate both of that. It is a fundamental mistreating of this character, and it is awful. But so Magneto goes on his own to chase after Mystique, who is going into hiding, kinda. She's also still trying to kill Trask in a different way. They're it's a whole thing. In that time, Xavier goes back to the X Mansion and finally accepts his powers again and uses uses what the fuck is it called? The machine. Cerebro. My brain kept going Oculus.
Yeah, Xavier invents the Oculus Rift, and he becomes a gamer, and that's how humanity is united.
He's got a whole headset and everything. But yeah, he uses Cerebro, and then it's too much, and he kind of breaks down a little bit, and then Wolverine is like, "Hey, read my mind. Go super deep in there," and pushes Xavier to not read his current mind, but his future mind, which is a place that future Xavier can communicate with.
It's actually very fascinating that they did this, and I really like it. I think that was a good moment.
It was a great moment, and the way, especially how they kind of described Wolverine kind of walking him through it, it made sense. It wasn't something pulled out of nowhere. It was like, this is a logical outcome of the things that we have seen so far. And then they have older Xavier give young Xavier a wonderful kind of little pep talk speech, and it's another great scene. There's another emotional scene, and then that kind of allows Xavier to like fully accept himself, and he's able to use Cerebra properly. And then they find Mystique, who is going to be at this showcase of the Sentinels, of the original form of the Sentinels, the original prototypes that don't have Mystique powers. She's going to be there to kill Trask. Magneto follows her there. Xavier and Wolverine and others also go there. The night before, as the Sentinels are being shipped to the stage, Magneto breaks in and weaves metal all throughout their exoskeleton, because they don't have any metal in them because they know about Magneto. But he weaves metal into them to be able to take control of them. And then, so a bunch of stuff happens on the day of the show. Mystique tries to kill Trask, but Xavier freezes her just in time. Magneto takes control of the Sentinels, has them fire near innocent civilians. No innocent civilians die, but they are attacked. And then Magneto lifts an entire stadium and plops it down around the stage, and also weaves fucking a gigantic amount of rebar throughout Wolverine's body and throws him into a lake to drown him, which is horrifying.
As someone who has a severe fear of drowning, I felt it.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Terrifying.
It was a lot. It was visceral.
And that was the end of Wolverine.
Yeah,
Love
that's
to
pretty
see
much.
him.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything more active in the plot after that. But
Yeah, the rest of the plot, he is just drowning in his own personal hell.
yeah, but he set up.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he set up everything he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier. So Magneto. At this point with the attack, the president and Trask and a bunch of the cabinet members are in this little safe room that Magneto just kind of like rips out from the ground and throws open the doors. And while the attack was going on, Mystique was also got into the safe room.
Right. She had she had transformed first into a guard.
She's still the guard when she goes into the safe room. But she's found out by Trask, who is like a mutant detector gizmo. And then she transforms herself into... Is it Nixon?
Yeah, it's supposed to be Nixon.
Yeah. So
I don't think the movie ever says Nixon.
I don't know.
They just say Mr. President. But, like, it's obviously Nixon.
Right, so she transforms herself into the president and then kind of, like, steps in front of everybody and is like, you know, you can kill me, but let them go type deal. Mm-hmm. And then that distracts Magneto enough that she can get a shot off at him. And the bullet goes like through his neck, not straight through, but like through the side of his neck, and it basically like temporarily knocks him out for like 5 minutes.
That would knock me out for life.
Yeah, it's
so,
a
like,
rough
what a trooper!
Wound. It's a rough wound, and then Mystique kind of shows herself, and then Xavier freezes everybody to talk with her directly and be like, hey. You could kill Trask here, or you can let yourself be the hero and give mutants a better name here in this moment. And then she walks away and kind of like says, you know, and kind of accepts that second choice, which leads to the better future that Wolverine wakes up to. Mm-hmm. Magneto gets away. And we'll see what happens with him later. And that's pretty much it. Xavier opens up the school, and then it kind of like leads into like a better version of the X-Men trilogy timeline. And then the Days of Future Past timeline poofs.
Yeah. And Wolverine, you know, he wakes back up in the new future, which is nice. It's beautiful. Rogue is alive. Everyone's alive.
Well, Rogue never died.
Well, they never showed her in the movie, so it's kind of, you can assume that she's probably dead.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
I wonder, would she have her powers, though? Because at the end of 2, she, like...
No, 3. 3's the one with the cure.
It blends together. It fucking blends together.
Well, 3, she explicitly gets the cure.
Right, okay, so she gets the cure. So I think in this timeline, she probably didn't get the cure. The cure probably doesn't exist.
And it's hard to say exactly, but well, in the good future timeline, she doesn't have her powers. She kisses Bobby. She's at the school, but she kisses Bobby.
Oh,
you remember that? No. Okay, that's fine.
I don't. You know that I'm not interested in their romance.
Well, the reason why you said that, there was a scene. It's kind of like a deleted scene. It's kind of like an alternate cut. There's a sequence that in the movie, or not in the actual movie, but there's a sequence that you can find out there where Magneto and Bobby and it's just Magneto and Bobby go to the X Mansion, or is it the X Mansion? Is it like a dilapidated X Mansion? It's like somewhere.
I believe so.
They go to a place and they find Rogue being kind of experimented on and free her, and she still has her powers, and she replaces Kitty Pryde. She grabs Kitty Pryde's powers, grabs a little bit of Wolverine's powers to heal her, and then takes over and continues. That's not in the actual movie, but it also implies like, oh, she didn't take the cure. in the timeline, but in the good timeline she did. We're not going to squabble on the details. I know you'd love to.
I fucking love the small details. You know me.
Right, but we're not going to squabble.
Right, okay.
Overall, this movie was really fun.
Yes.
It wasn't perfect, but
Well, Jennifer Lawrence was in it, so of course it was.
But this movie was really good, and of the X-Men movies that we've watched so far, one of my favorites, surprisingly.
I mean, it was a lot better than X-Men 3.
Yes.
It was... I'd say it's better than
I would say it's better than X2.
First Class.
Yeah, definitely better than First Class. We had a lot of issues with First Class. I would say it's better than X2. I liked X2, but I think this is better than X2 because there wasn't really any superfluous parts of it, which X2 did have a good chunk of. I would say it's on par with the first movie. Maybe a little bit better. It's hard to say. Characterizations are better, but I do like the snappy nature of the first movie. I'd say they're on par with each other. Both are good. Both are really good. So, it'll be a little rough for our remakes. It's hard to remake a good movie, but I'm sure we've got some good ideas clattering around. So,
I do have a lot of ideas. Something I would like to say. It was Peter Dinklage playing Trask.
Yes.
Something that I really liked is that, as far as I can remember, not once did anyone mock his height.
I don't think so. Yeah, maybe there was one time in the first scene with Trask, but it wasn't a focal point of the scene. Maybe even it was like a misinterpretation of what they meant.
Oh, right, when he's first talking to like all the senators and what have you,
giving his initial Sentinel Project proposal, and they reject it.
But other than that, like, he is respected by his peers.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
like he's allowed to just be a very smart bastard that happens to be abnormally very small.
No, I think that's a definitely good note. So, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the remakes.
Yes. I just assume we're starting with me.
It's how we've been doing.
I will say this one I found hard to remake for a few reasons. First, because yes, it was such an enjoyable experience, but also because I was torn. On one hand, I love Kitty Pryde, and I have made that abundantly clear, and this was her story in the comics. On the other hand, I actually do like the decision to use Logan because he is just so delightfully bad at being diplomatic. I think it really works. And also for the characters as they are now, or, back then, Kitty would have stood out a little bit too much, because she is more of a happy character.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in the movie she really doesn't have much of a character.
Unfortunately not.
But in the comics and other adaptations, she's just such like a happy, optimistic character. And what Charles and Xavier needed back then was whatever the fuck Wolverine is.
I mean, he's just like an extremely powerful kick in the ass.
He's a grumpy old man.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So ultimately, I'm going to stick with Wolverine going back. Main character beats will be the same. Charles is taking the injections to walk and dilute his powers. Vietnam tore away his students, etc. However, I don't want Magneto to be imprisoned. What I'm thinking is, going off my last remake, Eric didn't leave the group. He helped Charles with the school, but then Vietnam happened. He was furious. He would be against the American government's bullshit antics over there. And sending innocent people, some his people, to needlessly die like fodder. He acts brashly, gets framed for killing JFK, goes on the run. Doesn't have contact with Charles, who just, disappointed in him. Because that's really all Charles does, is be disappointed. I imagine he's going around trying to strengthen his power and stop war efforts, maybe rallying up mutant hippies. I figure at this point he doesn't want to stick around anywhere or with anyone for long. He's back mainly to being a loner. Except occasionally Mystique, who helps him out with anti-war efforts. Pulling shit like we see in the movie where she transforms into generals and gets mutant soldiers sent home instead of off to be experimented on. Speaking of that, I want more of it. Which, out of context, sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Like, Mystique and Eric knowing or having suspicions about experimentation on mutants going on, so of course they're going to try to stop that. It's been a slow process, but they're trying. I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
Because of this, instead of breaking out of... Where was it? Under the Pentagon?
Yeah.
Yeah, and instead of that, Wolverine knows, because future Magneto told him before he time jumped, that Eric is about to attack, I don't know, a government building or something, so they have to hurry up and stop him. Maybe the Pentagon. Bring that back in.
He's about to do a 9/11. But couple decades before it.
Holy fuck. Hold on, that really got me. I'm imagining, like, the old, a meme, the old comics Magneto, and just the text saying, I'm about to do a 9/11. And it's so funny. But yeah, so they have to hurry up and stop him. It's a fun moment, and we can still have Quicksilver, mainly because I love him. And there'll also be plenty of tension between Charles and Eric, all that good stuff. They manage to stop him and convince him to help. He reveals he doesn't know where Mystique is, just that she was personally going to stop Trask. Which, he would approve of.
Yeah.
So we still have to have that fantastic jet scene. We still get Mystique infiltrating the big peace meeting with Trask and getting outed as a mutant. The gang shows up to stop her and save the day / future. A major change here is that I do not want Eric to attack Mystique.
Yeah.
Because it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea, and it makes no sense any way you look at it. Just none of that nonsense here. However, it's not going to be an easy mission, because the movie can't be too short,
Right.
Loken still has his PTSD flashback, seeing Stryker, and switches places with his past self. Mystique is not going to want to stand down so easily. But instead of Eric going, time to die on her, they're going to be attacked. There'll be a huge battle, fighting will happen, and they'll be seen by the public, but it won't be Eric's fault.
Okay.
And Mystique's blood is still going to be at the crime scene. So we can still move up to that. So in the movie, people go their separate ways. I don't want that here. Mystique, injured, comes with them to Xavier's. She's filled in. There are a lot of emotions. Now, I want everyone to be privy to how bad Charles is doing. Like, they see him as the serum wears off, and it is shocking to Eric and Mystique. And it also makes them go, maybe he's not fit to try and order anyone else around. So they're all discussing what to do, because Trask wasn't killed, but they've got Mystique DNA now. This is bad. This still means a future war against mutants is going to happen. I do want Eric to go, if we kill Trask, they kill us. But if we kill all of the government, ... haha, just kidding. Unless... Of course Charles says no. He's a killjoy.
Yeah.
A few different ideas are thrown around, but nothing's agreed on, so they all separate for the night in the mansion. Mystique and Eric just slip out in the middle of the night. They agree that Trask needs to be stopped, the Sentinels need to be stopped, and Charles either won't or just cannot help. They have got to be the bad guys everyone forces them to be. And I think this will really solidify both of their arcs as, yeah, we're the villains here, and that's okay. When the others wake up, they realize, well, fuck, we need to find those two. They're frantic, there's no good way to track them down. Except, of course, Cerebro. Finally, Charles gives up the serum and lets the voices back in, and tries to use Cerebro to find them. Now, I want it to be the same as the original. At first he fails, but he then gets a pep talk from future Charles. It is too good of a scene not to have.
Yeah, for sure.
And also solidifies his arc of, he has fallen so low in his grief, and now he's got to build himself back up for others. So he uses Cerebro, finds out their location, and realizes they're going to be at the Sentinels unveiling. From here, a lot of things are going to play out similarly. Magneto tears up a whole stadium, because it's badass.
Yeah.
He put metal in the Sentinels so he could control them. Mystique is disguised as a Secret Service guy, watching Trask closely. I would like a moment of Mystique and Eric talking beforehand and just, like, commiserating. Something like, here we are trying to save our own kind from extinction, that we know is looming over us, and yet we're the villains. Because this is a tragedy to which both would be able to see.
Yeah.
So, big climax happens, Magneto is intent on killing everyone so he can make a show of it, send a message. Mystique is with him, especially after Trask. And Charles and company try to stop them, Wolverine gets tossed into the ocean, etc.
Truly horrific fate for Wolverine.
We have to have it. It's too good / horrific to not include.
Yeah.
The ending I want a bit different. I want Charles, begging both Mystique and Magneto not to do this. That there's still time to turn things around. To build a bridge between humans and mutants. Eric, however, points out that it would take a much larger act than just backing down now. Because all this shit has gone down. The US government, come on, we just saw this with Vietnam. They're not gonna back down.
Yeah.
I don't want Mystique to play the hero, though. One, that's just not her style, and it makes no sense going forward for her character.
Right.
Two, she doesn't want to be a hero to humans. But you know who does have a history of befriending humans and even being part of the government? Hank fucking McCoy.
Indeed.
I want Mystique to make Hank be the hero and chase, quote-unquote, her and Magneto away. For now. Happy ending, Trask still gets arrested for selling government secrets to other countries. Wolverine wakes up in a better world.
Nice.
Except I want that better world different than what we got in the movie.
Okay. I don't know if you need to go into all of the bespoke differences in a minute-long scene at the end of the movie.
I'm not going to go into a long thing. It's just, first of all, instead of seeing only the good mutants, let me see some of the villains like Pyro or Toad. And let Rogue have her powers, goddammit. But maybe with more control of them, since this is a better the timeline. Let's see some of the mutants we only saw in the Bad Future timeline, like Bishop. I don't know what he's doing at the school, but he's there because fuck it. Besides, we need to add as much color to the film because, once again, very white once we got into the past. Very white.
Yeah.
That's the biggest complaint about the movie. It's just like...
But that's not really this movie's fault. That's just First Class's fault.
It is. They tried to do what they could with the background characters, but at least bring them back in the ending. Don't just leave them in a bad future.
That's fair. Okay, not as long as you were.
I told you.
Making it seem, but it was relatively short for you.
It was condensed.
Okay.
For me.
For you. Not too bad. I like that. I like the little differences. We're really having a bit of a role reversal lately. You go for the smaller adjustments and whatnot. My idea is very different.
Oh, I'm excited.
But I do like your adjustments, just kind of like taking what's there and making it kind of fit together a bit better. I do like that quite a bit. My idea, it comes down to one major thing. One major issue I have with this movie that I didn't fully realize I had this issue with it until I sat down and thought about it for a while after we watched it. Vietnam is a backdrop in this movie just to justify the date. There's no other reason for Vietnam being in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is the wildest fucking thing ever. Because the Vietnam War is so weirdly impactful on history.
Right.
It has so many roots in so many things that are happening now. But the Vietnam War's over. We're in the immediate aftermath of the Vietnam War. And so none of those effects on history pertain to the plot. They're already cemented by the time the movie takes place.
Yeah. I really thought that this movie was going to have more to do with Vietnam.
Right. So my version will, because the timing of when they go back to the past is, instead of going right after the Vietnam War, they're going to go right before the Vietnam War.
Oh.
Or right at the beginning of it.
Okay.
Now, that's the main crux of this movie. That's the main change. There's a major detail that I've gone back and forth on quite a bit. I can't fully decide. My initial idea was that the time travel mission was to... So, like, the whole thing about the Sentinels being there to target mutants, I don't love that, because I get the anti-mutant sentiment. That part is understandable. But, like, using Mystique's DNA to enhance them feels antithetical to that. It seems like, we're using mutants to fight mutants. It just seems like a weird thing with the setup that they have in the movie. They don't fully sell it as a decision that a person would make. They try to with Trask in a couple of the scenes. It doesn't fully get there, you know? However, if you were in a losing war, things were going really, really awful for you, and then a couple of your soldiers showcased incredibly powerful military abilities, and then single-handedly won the war for you, you would want to figure out how to recreate their abilities in as many weapons as possible.
Oh, yes.
So ultimately, the big change that this Days of Future Past timeline has, separating it from the main X-Men universe, is that America won Vietnam by use of mutants.
Interesting. I'm fascinated by those ramifications.
Right. But the anti-mutant sentiment is still there. I mean, nobody knew that they were mutants when they signed up. It was all hush-hush hidden. Maybe a couple of very specific commanders knew but used their abilities to help out in combat. But the military as a whole didn't know. It wasn't in records. It wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't touted as a thing. Because there is a lot of anti-mutant sentiment. All that hate's still there. But you really want those powers.
Right.
So the Sentinels, and especially the Mystique Sentinels, are a way to get the powers of a mutant, but to cut out the mutant.
I like this, yes.
So it's all of that hate solidified. And then them being used to target mutants makes a lot of sense. It is the strongest power we have. It's the strongest beings currently on the planet. We will take them out. They steal mutant powers, then use them against them.
Fascinating. I really like that. I would watch a movie all about that.
Yeah. The reason why I'm going back and forth on this is because the implications of saying, like, hey, we need you to make sure we lose this war and have a lot of soldiers die, not an amazing bit of implication.
Right, no, that is bad.
The premise of a movie being, let's make sure America loses the Vietnam War, probably is not going to sit well with a lot of people.
Right.
So, there's hesitancy there. I'm sorry if for some reason there's Vietnam vets listening to this.
I'd be shocked if there was a Vietnam vet listening to this.
Yeah.
I mean, what could happen ultimately is take your idea, they see these mutants and want to use their powers. But I mean, like, I'm sure there are Vietnamese mutants out there fighting the good fight.
Yeah, well, the reason why specifically it's like the Vietnam War needs to be a loss is for the idea of these, like, using these mutant powers to be an embarrassment. Because the Vietnam War is an embarrassment for America. For a lot of Americans, it is embarrassing. And having that wrapped up in it would kill the Sentinel program forever.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
There are still, like, people who believe that Vietnam was won by America.
Yeah. I don't know if we have the time or energy to really dive into that.
Just thought I'd mention it.
So, yeah, weird implications. Sorry if that's not cool. I don't really know where that lands.
It is very interesting. It could open up a lot of philosophical questions that X-Men likes to play around with.
Yes.
And not deliver on.
Yes. And it would be the perfect thing for Xavier and Magneto to differ on.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because it's a difficult question to answer. It's like, we can prevent this potential future outcome that will save a lot of lives, but to do so, we have to let innocent soldiers die right now, and a good amount of them. And then the question becomes like, oh, they're soldiers. Are they innocent? Magneto will definitely think no.
All right.
It makes that decision a lot easier for him. Xavier just sees them as people.
Mm-hmm.
So but ultimately would be like a situation where Xavier would ultimately go along with it because the events of the potential future are so truly horrible that it's horrific, and maybe we can find ways to pull out of Vietnam. Maybe Xavier's thinking like maybe we just get the military to just pull out of Vietnam now. Stop the whole war now. Fewer people die across the board. That could be his approach. It's a better thing. And then but Magneto would be like, no, they have to be disgraced in combat to fully abandon this idea. That could be the way in which they differ. That makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think of on the fly. So that's the main crux of the change. And ultimately, the events of the movie, it's going to be a lot of Xavier, Magneto, and Wolverine going and getting mutant soldiers out of Vietnam. It's going to be the vast majority of it. They go in and they grab mutant soldiers, they bring them out.
Okay.
I want a particular note being that Magneto is not imprisoned. In the lead up to Vietnam, he was trying to build... What the fuck is the name of the city in the comics? Genosha. Magneto is trying to build Genosha, an all-mutant country away from prejudice and persecution.
I like that.
He's trying to, and then the Vietnam War happens, and he really can't.
Right.
Shit gets really, really rough for anybody traveling at all. A lot of people are forced into the military. A lot of mutants are forced into the military. A lot of people don't have a choice. But it's an important note, A, to establish Genosha. Also, it's important because the mutants, all the mutants are going to come willingly. Some with some argument. Others will just immediately be like, I don't want to be here. But none of them can go home. They are MIA. They abandon their post. They are potentially treasonous. So going to Genosha is their way out.
That's interesting. I like that.
So that's an important aspect of this. I'm back and forth on whether I want Trask to be an active part of the plot. It would make sense that he would be, but I don't have a great justification for him to be in Vietnam. This one's a little... I'll be real with y'all. This is less developed than some of my other ideas.
Hey, that's
I got a lot of questions in the air still.
It's all about throwing out those questions. And
I want the future Sentinels, of course, to be in the future. And all of the future stuff is going to be exactly the same. I don't want to change any of it.
Okay.
Just keep that all the same.
Okay.
I don't necessarily know if I want past Sentinels to be there. I want them to be a reaction to the Vietnam War, so it would happen after the events of the movie.
Okay, okay.
Or rather not.
So, like, we wouldn't see them until, like, we get a hint of them towards the end?
Yeah, maybe like prototypes that aren't finished yet, but like,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't, the only active fighting of uh, the Sentinels would be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's just something because like I cannot see a situation where these Sentinels are made before the government is like, we want to harness mutant powers.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's really no scenario where that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Even with somebody like Trask, like, because like those things are fucking gigantic and they cost so much money.
Yeah.
No return on them. There's no way that maybe one. Maybe we can have just one Sentinel prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have it based on the comic book Sentinels way more than it was in this movie. Really go full indulgent with them.
My little goofy comic guys.
They're great. I'm okay, yeah, honestly, thinking about it more, I'm okay with the exactly one prototype
Mm-hmm.
in the comic visual style showing up in Vietnam, not for the war, but when Trask finds out that people are taking mutant soldiers out of the fray and endangering the war effort, because he's like obsessed with mutants, and like, so he knows there's a bunch of mutants in the military, and he's like, oh, they're gonna really save our ass. He's gonna be like, oh, you're endangering the war effort, these other people don't realize that they're mutants and have these powers, I have to step in myself, I'm gonna send in this Sentinel.
Okay, yeah.
Off the books, not connected directly
Mm-hmm.
to the government, but is kind of like the first wave of this, like, they're taking these extreme measures to fight mutants kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then we have a fun fight scene with an old Sentinel with, I honestly, I want to just have it be like Sentinel and Wolverine one-on-one. Because, Magneto
Yeah.
was there, Xavier was there. I feel like that would be like a bit of an easier fight.
Right.
But like maybe we can have like a situation set up where it's like just Wolverine, maybe Wolverine and Mystique versus the Sentinel. We can have a fun little fight scene there.
That'd be a fun little team up.
Yeah, Mystique's also gonna be like, I call the Mystique Sentinels the future ones. I don't necessarily know if I want their powers to be based on Mystique.
That's fair.
That's a little contrived. It's a little contrived to force Mystique into the spotlight. I like it as a general. They are just taking the powers from the mutants that they're facing directly, and they can kind of like siphon and reuse. I like that idea more. That's more thematically appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
rather than it being based on a specific mutant. If we just take care of this one mutant, everything is solved.
Right.
That's not how world works.
Right. Yeah.
Because like if Eric, in the original movie, if Eric had killed Mystique and they'd gotten rid of all the DNA, whatever, Mystique's DNA was out of the picture, future Sentinels just be based on the DNA of a different mutant.
Right. Like, there's so many they could be based off of because they all have a lot of amazing powers. Except the kid who blinked and could change the TV channel.
Yeah.
He's an outlier and shouldn't be counted.
So, yeah, this is a bit of a rough one, but basically it would be Wolverine, Mystique, Magneto, Xavier, and Beast in the thickets of Vietnam, finding mutant soldiers, getting them out of hotspots, and then fighting a Sentinel, and like dealing with the philosophical ideas of losing a war to avoid an apocalyptic future.
Losing a war to circumvent a genocide.
Yeah, I wish I had a stronger list of specific details to kind of really carry the story forward. But I don't know. It was hard to kind of piece this together.
There are solid building blocks here that I think would be really fun to play with.
Yeah, there is a story here, and it would be a fun story to watch, and it would really highlight the philosophical differences between Xavier and Magneto. I think you get some great scenes out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably recreate the plane scene like on their way to Vietnam too. Keep that in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. X-Men running around Vietnam, taking care of mutants, and fighting a Sentinel. That's really it. That's what I got.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Maybe that's a thing. Like if I think about it more, I'll write about it. We'll see.
Yeah. I think overall this was a good movie.
It was a great movie.
It was enjoyable. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm looking forward to the third one.
It's X-Men
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse. Just Apocalypse.
Well, I am excited. We just have Apocalypse and
Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix
is bad. We already know this going in.
At least I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
We're almost there.
We're almost there.
Rewatch Days of Future Past, everyone. You're gonna enjoy it.
That first hour was honestly so good.
Yeah.
And I still really like Magneto tearing a stadium out of its foundation.
That was great. That was wonderful.
Was it fully necessary?
No. Not in the slightest.
Was it fantastic and beautiful and dramatic? And oh so very much Magneto? Yes.
I mean, it's the epitome of over the top queer camp. It's the equivalent. It's the superpower equivalent of queer camp.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's just absolutely dazzling.
All right, well, those were our remakes. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to take these ideas and expand upon them, let us know. Just let us know what you do with them. We don't care if you do or don't, but definitely give us a heads up. We'd love to see them.
I would love to see a rendition of any of this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Oh, you know what I want?
What's that?
I want fan art of Kitty Pryde, how she looks in the comics, full on pink and everything, just edited into the scene on the jet, where Eric and Charles are arguing that first time. Oh. I just want her edited on there, just like maybe giving a pouty face, like.
She's like so like anxious and freaked out about these two gay men screaming at each other.
It's like, oh no, my gay uncles are screaming at each other.
Yeah, she can't do anything about it. She has to let it pass.
I just want that.
Because like Wolverine's face was like so like, oh fuck, like the entire time. So it was so funny to see hers.
Bonus points if you edit in like. Not a live action version, just either her comic version or one of the animated adaptations. Like X-Men Evolution is what I'm imagining. So that's what I want.
And you send it to us. Twitter's dying, so email it to us.
Twitter is dying.
Have you seen the shit?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's bad.
Yeah. Well, we'll see y'all next time.
We still have a Twitter, by the way.
Yeah, so far. We'll see y'all next time for X-Men Apocalypse.
Bye.
Bye-bye.